Today, we're joined by Chris Joyce, founder of Gusher, a startup launch platform helping founders bypass traditional funding and build performance-based equity. With 24 startups under his belt and over 350 Gusher companies launched so far, Chris brings a no BS view of what makes founders truly successful. In this episode, we talk about why startups fail. Hint, it's not about the ideas. Why honesty is the ultimate founder superpower, and how Gusher is giving builders everywhere, regardless of background or bank account, a shot at making their vision real. If you're building or even thinking about starting something, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. I am here with my buddy Chris Joyce, and I got to say, Chris, it's fantastic to have you on. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to the audience. First question I got for you: what got you interested in the intersection of humanity and technology?
I almost say that I don't think there is an intersection. I think there's almost in a way, they're so wrapped up in each other that it's kind of hard to separate at this stage. I can't imagine a business not being tied to technology in some way. As a matter of fact, I heard recently of a founder that he was making a certain business I won't go into it, but he did like 60 grand, very small amount his first year just using a phone. The next year he did about 600 grand using just the phone. And even then he's like, I've tapped out. I can't take it any further. Now he's got to figure out the platform, the system, the whatever to do it. So you can't start a business these days necessarily without being wrapped up and tied intensely to technology, and almost from the very beginning through the end with every step that you take. It's tied into it.
It's a nice reframe. And I know we were just talking about some opportunities that we have with friends in business, and whether we're developing those relationships or starting those relationships. And I think that that's one of those things that kind of ties into this conversation very, very well. And so what I would love to understand is how your view of building tech companies has evolved over time. And I'm one thing is really impressive, Chris, is you've done 24 companies. That's incredible. And you've got such a rich background as being an entrepreneur. And so how has your philosophy changed over time, I
Evolve.
guess? And
Yeah,
how'd you get
sure.
to this place? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing, and it started out with that, and I think today the venture capital ecosystem really looks at companies in the same way as I used to 20, 25, 30 years ago. And that's that when you're creating a technical solution for this technical problem, the one thing that almost always you leave out, and I'm glad that your podcast is called this, is the humanity. And unfortunately, when you leave out the humanity, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm getting goosebumps. When you leave out the humanity, the problem is that the products that are created aren't necessarily usable by the humans. And that's why you have, we think, such a very high failure rate when it comes to creating tech companies, because it's always problem, solution, problem, solution. Well, we fundamentally believe that you put that human part at the very, very beginning, and then you end up leapfrogging generational development with your products when you actually do that. All right. It doesn't have to find this magical product market fit. So in the beginning stages of my career, I didn't do that. I was guilty just as everyone else. Create that solution. You'll go ahead and take it out there and have success. And many times you would, all right, which kind of masks a deeper problem. But eventually, no matter what business I've had, you always have to cross that humanity line pretty damn quickly at some point. So that technology part is damn good, but the humanity part is what makes it work.
It's interesting you say that, because when I'm speaking about the path to let's say AGI or ASI, and the revolution that happens along with that, and seeing, and I'm guys, look, it is happening, right? We're coming to that point where intelligence is getting achievable. General intelligence is additionally maybe the next stage, or 2, 3 down the line. But our adoption of this is still a human experience. And it takes us some time. And even though faster rates of adoption are happening with new technology, we're gonna have, this little pushback of how fast we can adopt something based on how fast humans can really come about it.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, it's also the limitations of people and their willingness to learn or to try new things. I mean, right now, obviously, when you have a young population or the younger people, it's much easier in a way for them to adopt it. If you, as you get older, you may get more set in your ways, or you get used to these patterns of behavior, and either you go ahead and seek out that disruption yourself, a better way to do things, or you're going to be one of the casualties laid to waste on the side of the road. I mean, a lot of stuff that AI is doing, I always say it's 80% of the way there. It's not 100% of the way there. But let me say something. If it's able to get you 80% of the way there, that's a lot of heavy lifting, because that frees you up to be able to concentrate on either making that 20% difference way better, and or bringing some other value to that marketplace or whatever the hell you're doing. So that AI, at least for us, it does a lot of heavy lifting also.
Oh, same here. I mean, like, this is an example from 2 years ago, like, when we first sat down and we're using, GPT-2 and GPT-3, and, like, looking at I think one of the outcomes was we were redesigning one of our websites, and in that process, we had content that needed to be reviewed, you had UX that needed to be reviewed, you had different people that were doing different things, and then, like, I think it was myself or one of our other, like, staff members goes in, types out what we're looking for, gets the feedback, sends it off to one of our clients for feedback, and then takes their feedback and immediately just sends it back to the AI, and the AI spits it back. The client gets it, reviews it, and is like, yeah, this is perfect, everything. And we cut probably 3 days of back and forth down to 10 minutes. And like it was 80% of the way there, but that 80% saved us 3 days and probably 4 to 5 hours of effort in that, like, back and forth. And so, yeah, it's an incredible advantage to have
We
it.
use it for all that type of stuff, but one of the things that I use it for on a personal level is I'm kind of like a verbal thinker. I like our interaction right now. I can go off on tangents and I see deep, and sometimes hearing my own voice is what I need to have to be able to ideate successfully. So I'll utilize ChatGPT, I think for whatever the hell the paid version is right now, and I literally do that. I say pretend that you're this person and you're taking the opposite viewpoint of whatever I say to punch holes in it. And let's start attacking this idea. And I literally will sit there for 20, 30 minutes arguing with ChatGPT just to see if my thoughts hold weight. And that's been invaluable, because now my wife is happy because I don't stress her out with my business conversations at night. So, and it's much better than my wife. So,
You know what? I think you and I are very similar. Like, I need to hear myself go. And you were asking why I created the podcast in the first place. Well, the reason I was having some of those conversations is I'm a much better thinker in these spaces as well. And so it is helpful to kind of refine that. And I have found myself using like local LLMs to play Carl Jung, right? Like, hey, you're going to do this. We're going to analyze dreams. We're going to analyze mindset. We're going to go through those spaces because we can now have a persona that comes into the context of like how we're going. Um, have you delved into like agentic AI in your companies? Have you jumped into any like agentic AI?
we have AI companies.
Ah, interesting. So basically, if you look at like how we're using conversational AI like ChatGPT in that interaction, well, now take it to uh the agent actually takes a goal that you give it, and then it goes out and performs the tasks in order to perform that goal. Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, yes. The one thing that I've seen though also is that they're utilizing a lot of it for almost in a way task-based coaching to be able to get that information, tie it back into actions on a day-to-day basis, and then split it back to action plans and everything else, and you name it. So, but that is a different type of founder we've seen that does it that way. So I don't want to say it's few and far between, but the adoption hasn't been much like that. Using the agents out there to go ahead and create other stuff to do the heavy lifting. Yeah, like that linear part, but doing something more complex, I haven't seen much of it.
And I think it is rather like we're seeing use cases come about where we can have a defined workflow and then we can, build that. And like, so some of it's like document review that we're seeing, others is like sales enablement. And then on the side of like, hey, can I get an agent where I can just say, hey, get this goal. And then you have all these other resources that you can go out and create that plan and then execute on that plan. We're at the beginning stages of where that's happening.
I hear you. And the one thing is, I think with at least startups, which is my world, is that anything that can go ahead and reduce expenses at the beginning and allow growth or automation without a tremendous amount of investment upfront, they're open to. And so that goes across the board. Most stuff with utilizing the existing LLMs is not extremely cost intensive, obviously. So they can do certain things with it very easily.
Yeah, I can tell you we have a set of agents that are running to give us feedback on, or actually not feedback, but basically to create a dossier on people before we meet with them. It runs 5, 6 agents, right? Like it does a review of your social, it does a review of your career, company, and then business strategist comes in and, kind of like puts together like, hey, here's what's happening. And cost me, I think, 15 cents, right? Like that thing. And it's put together in 6 minutes compared to 2, 3 hours of work. Yeah.
So you have a full dossier on somebody, doesn't do anything, not, and it's pretty much instantaneous. Am I wrong? I mean, it's pretty damn quick.
Basically instantaneous compared to like what it would take for saying, hey, go out and do this research and then organizing 5 people to do it who have different skill sets. Yeah.
And then having them to have to summarize that, which is the hard part, into something that's condensed and actually can go ahead and read easily. I get it. I get it. That's an awesome thing.
Absolutely, right? Like, these are really helpful tools that kind of come about, but what I would love to understand is, like, the work you're doing at Gusher is helping other entrepreneurs as well. Like, I went down a little bit of a spiritual path, not even a little bit of a spiritual path, like, 6 years ago, and I was asking somebody, like, "Hey, what happens after you're done healing?" And the guy looks at me and goes, "You help others." And I was like, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. So after, 23 companies and this is your 24th, like Gusher is helping other entrepreneurs. Like, how did you come about like deciding that was going to be the problem that you were solving?
It actually goes way, way back. I mean, way back to the beginning. So, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and Fairborn, Ohio, in what I like to say is the middle of cornfields and soybean fields and factories. It was kind of either or near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I saw my mom struggle to go ahead and keep a roof over my brother and my heads. He later went on to become a physicist at Cal Berkeley, and I studied at NYU. So she was successful in that. But she always had entrepreneurial ideas. And they were great ideas, but she was a female. It was the 80s. There's no such thing as a venture capital ecosystem in Ohio. There still isn't. And so, seeing her inability to go ahead and bring an idea to life, that made an impact upon me because my experience was the complete opposite over the years, which I'm happy to go into or not. But seeing her struggle and not getting anywhere, and seeing that human potential, I don't want to say lost, but it was lost for a good couple decades. She later went on to make FU money in her 50s. But she seeing her struggle is really what made an impact upon me.
That is incredible. And it is the times of struggle that gives us the resilience to pull through. And that's exciting. I also grew up in Ohio.
Where'd you grow up in Ohio? Where?
Between Cleveland and Akron, Hudson.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Only people from Ohio can say that, by the way.
Exactly. My brothers are in Cleveland and Cincinnati and Columbus now, and I got friends and family and Dayton too. So
Oh, it's great in
I can
Dayton.
definitely appreciate it. Yeah, it is. And like you said, there isn't a venture capital space. There are opportunities, but it is really challenging.
I still, to this day, the only deals I see come out of Ohio typically, and I feel bad saying this because I know there's got to be more, are really fundamentally hardcore industrial. It's still plastic injection molding companies. It's still, stuff that's oriented around steel. It's not like you're seeing some great software oriented companies come out of there. I'm sure there are. I'm not seeing consumer good companies or anything. It's all old industry, still.
It's a lot of old industry. And then like Columbus does have a decent financial services sector as well as, yeah, but it's like, it's still a mid-tier market.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, what I remember about Columbus is when I was 15, 16, I used to skip school and attend SCORE meetings, Senior Corps of Retired Executives, to learn how to write a business plan. And to this day, I still write business plans the way I was taught at the SCORE meetings in Columbus.
So as an entrepreneur, like writing a business plan, the exercise for you is I mean, you've probably written a considerable amount, and is it an exercise that, leads to the company? Is it more of, the best laid plans, fall down the first time you're punched in the face, which is probably a Schwarzkopf and Tyson quote mixed.
I've heard all the arguments for and against business plans, and I get it. Okay. And I'm never, ever going to tell anybody to write out a business plan ever. I don't advocate it or speak for it. However, having said that, my average business plan for every business runs between 80 to 100 pages of full tilt business plans. And almost every time I've hit those numbers the first 3 to 5 years of financials. Now, is it good a business plan for past that? No, I believe a business plan is really fundamentally offers an extreme amount of value for clarity of thought for the first couple years. Does it go ahead and cover every issue? No. But if you take your time and really do it in depth, it can save you a hell of a lot of headaches. And it can really lay out that path to where you're not having to think, you're just executing solidly day after day. You just execute.
And that is a really great premise because, like, if you have a well laid plan, that execution comes easy. And I think that's the difference that I've seen with some entrepreneurs is they'll write the plan and then forget about it during execution, right? Like, and that really makes it less of a, dutiful document that you've created.
I view it kind of like a de facto Bible, and I'm not religious in any way, but I really view it as a de facto Bible. That's something you should be going to. It's your roadmap. You come back to it, and maybe you have to modify things as you're moving along, but it's literally your guide, and that's what you should be following.
And that makes it really helpful for, bringing on additional team members. You have something that you're all kind of like speaking to. And, your time as a CEO is much more valuable out on the streets, drumming up interest, drumming up business than it is, not maintaining the shop, but if you can lower that speed to getting proficient employees and proficient people who are on the team, then that document can really help.
And it's sometimes, it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, it's something that honestly, if you work together on it as a team in stages, that's another way of going about it, just to make sure that you're on the same page. The last thing I would do is create a marketing plan in depth. I would like my CMO do that. But at the same time, incorporating the numbers or where I think that we should be, yeah, that's something that is my responsibility as founder.
Yeah. What do you see the responsibilities of founders as being?
Think it's two things, only two
Okay.
things. Okay. I think it's fundamental philosophy. All right. The philosophy of the company and making sure that everybody is on the same page with that philosophy. And two, executing on a larger scale, the sales. A founder is there, and this is going to be, controversial in a way, but a founder is there to go ahead and sell, especially in the beginning stages. They are there to get the larger deals. They are there for the expansion. They are there to do the primary getting the cash in because you're able to get those sales. Sales is forgiving. Sales forgives all the other mistakes that's going to happen along the way that are unavoidable because sales is your lifeline. It's your blood. It's your air. You need sales from the very beginning.
Great philosophy.
It works.
I had an executive I was working with, and he goes, "Look, it's similar idea, right? Like all problems are solved with profit." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. Like a business that has a healthy flow through is much more happy."
And a lot of businesses, I don't want to say these days like it's changed, but it has changed. If it was 30 plus years ago, you would create a business right from the get-go to where it had to sell. It had to become self-sustainable. It wasn't where you had all this funding put in front of the model to then go ahead and develop a product and then magically find hopefully some product market fit and then sell the product. What we would do is primarily pre-sell that product, get that damn product out there in concept to make sure that it even makes sense to create it. So, the selling aspect, I don't minimize that at all. I really do think it's like the number one thing to do as a founder, especially a technical founder.
What's company 25?
I think Gusher is like this for a while. We have 350 portfolio companies. We'll be at 3,500 within the next 12 months. And then we see if we can scale above that.
You just say 3,500?
We're growing at a 10x rate right now. Yeah.
That's beautiful. What? Walk us through the premise of Gusher, and like, because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this right now, and you have such an interesting philosophy behind it that I want to make sure we get it on here.
Sure. Well, Gusher, real quick, is a platform to create, build, and launch companies, but without the need for capital, without the need for investors. So, what happens is people apply to join your company in exchange for performance based equity, meaning nobody gets a damn thing in the company unless the company is able to succeed, able to achieve its goals. And that includes us. We're a performance based equity player also. So, what I say to founders is imagine that you had a couple $1,000,000 in the bank account right this second. What would you build? How would you build it? And then Gusher that, because we do it all day, every day. We've got more than 350 companies across the globe in every different vertical, everything from consumer goods to manufacturing, SaaS, fintech, AR, VR, AI, gaming, medical device, prop tech, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, sports, you name it, we've got it. But more importantly, we've got greater than an 80% success rate where these companies become self-sustaining, and that's unbeatable. So if you're a solo founder, or even if you're a small team and you don't have capital, you're in the middle of Ohio, you have no way to get your company going, kind of like my mom in her Ohio days. Well, now you can. And we've taken everything from a 75-year-old grandma in South Africa to 20-year-old Villanova students and got them to very successful companies and everything in between. Every type of company you can imagine.
For entrepreneurs, solo founders, right? Like this is a fantastic platform to jump on and kind of like get guidance, mentorship, access to capital. It sounds like.
Yep, and access to people, because people is really where the initial capital typically goes. But even let's say you need manufacturing, well, you're like, where's that first 100,000 or 500,000 coming from the manufacturer? Well, the manufacturers typically join the deals. Or let's say it's advertising. You need advertising, marketing. Well, believe it or not, typically a lot of those companies have excess capacity. So we bring them into the company. So you don't need anything until you get to typically at least 10 million in sales volume or valuation. But usually above that, you may need capital to expand in a rapid way. But to get from 0 to 10 million, you don't need a damn penny. Nothing.
I think that's a really cool philosophy because, working with, seed investors, angel investors, right? Like you're always thinking about what's going on with the cap table. How is this happening? Do I have control of the company after I go raise this money? Right. And like, what are the qualifiers or the other, line items that are getting added to any sort of offer that you need to review? And then all of a sudden you got 100,000 in the bank and you're looking at a lawyer bill of another 20,000 and you're like, come
Well, see,
on.
that's because you didn't bring the lawyer into the deal either, which we do. Okay. So,
Exactly, right? Like, and there's, a lot of things that like early founders may not understand, but to be able to have that access to your information is a tremendous benefit. So
we call it the entrepreneur's education, and usually the entrepreneur's education costs about $1,000,000 plus or minus for an entrepreneur to lose to learn that, and that's why they have such a high failure rate too. I mean, it does. It costs $1,000,000 easily to learn and go through all the cycles. You've done it. You've had a numerous amount of companies. You know that.
I'm still learning.
Yeah, of
There's a
course.
lot of money that got spent last year that I'm still chalking up to learning.
Yep.
So
No, so our goal is just to go ahead and help them leapfrog generational development so they start generating cash and they don't have to get investors. But about 15% of our companies do get like VC and angel investment just at the team creation stage. So that says something.
that's really amazing. Like really beautiful that you can help out on that. What are some of the key metrics of like you're seeing in your creation of Gusher and then how you're helping the companies?
Sure. Well, I mean, it depends on your definition of metrics. So, and there's all different KPIs and everything else. So I'll keep it simple. When it comes to founders themselves coming into our platform, about 80%, around 81%, actually become successful. What do we mean by that? They become self-sustaining, meaning they're generating enough capital, keep that company going ad infinitum. And what they do after that just depends upon what path they're on. But when it comes to the types of people, all different types. There's no like demographic type of person that joins Gusher. It could be, as I said, 20-year-old kids out of Villanova, locally in Philadelphia, or it could be 75-year-old grandma and everything else in between. In terms of the ethnicity, the religions, in terms of their educational background, income level, everything in between. But we have seen two things that correlate directly to success. And it's kind of wild what they are. So most people always hear fake it till you make it and do that like in the beginning stages. On Gusher, it's not that at all. So usually the honest, I mean, insanely honest people, those are the ones that make it, where honesty is like, it's like, I don't want to say it's like a religion, but it is to them. They take honesty seriously. Those are the ones that make it. And the second thing, for some weird reason, there's a 95, 96% correlation between success and an extreme sports background, like MMA, Kung Fu, professional surfing, Olympian, leaving half your foot on the top of a mountain in the Swiss Alps. I mean, stuff like that, D1 football, whatever it may be. But it's not like they just did it in high school partially. They took it to a different level. So don't know why.
I grew up a wrestler.
Yeah, then there's no harder sport.
Well, and that was it was funny is that was always something that they told us. They're like, you'll get into job interviews, like people do, and like it was like, yeah, yeah, sure. And then it was that attitude of basically like, what, I'm on this mat and I got to give it 100%. Then like it's just me, right? Like my team can cheer me on, but it's just me. And like there is that radical accountability that you have to have in those spaces. And I think extreme sports probably also has that, but that's a really cool correlation.
I think you touched on a lot of the points, number one. I absolutely think that has validity. But I also think that the main gist with the sports background, the extreme sports background, is that it has to do with delayed gratification. So you have the ability to follow a plan, to go ahead and get incrementally better at it. I mean, trust me, as a wrestler, first year wrestler, all you're doing is facing the ceiling. Okay. Especially if you're in a lower weight group. I mean, I know I coached wrestling. I get it. All right. But if you go ahead and work your ass off, there's one thing about wrestling and most other sports, you get there. You get to that end game. Even if you're not talented, you will get to that end game just by pounding it over and over. And I think the same thing with business. You can be the most talentless person when it comes to business skills. But if you just keep relentlessly doing it, you'll get to the end game.
What other advice do you have for entrepreneurs? We've talked about the honesty, which I come about as authenticity. And I think there's a lot in the marketplace for people looking for authentic people. And another founder that I was talking to is in Silicon Valley, and he basically has been like blackballed because he had one failure. And I was like, one failure? You're like, I have one failure every day. Right? Like, and look, you take investor money and you have a failure and that sucks. And like, at the same time, I was like, there's something to be learned from that experience. And being that 90% of companies don't make it past their 5-year anniversary, there is a lot to be said about somebody who made it past and then still failed, but there's so much wisdom that could be lost to that. It seems like you have figured out like at least something to be helping founders either in that early stage or get past that as well. So outside of authenticity, outside of the tenacity that is required to, go past this, what other qualities do people need to embody in order to be that successful founder?
There's two things that I put on this little gold coin that I used to give wrestlers and founders. Okay. And on this gold coin on one side, it says, trust the process. Just trust the process. The reason is there's got to be a process to what you're doing. And so if you trust the process, doesn't matter whether you're having a good day, a bad day, a medium day, doesn't matter whether you're tired, whether you're feeling strong, whether you're in a good mood, a bad mood. If you're just trusting that process and you're working the process, stuff tends to work out in the long run. Okay. The second thing is the most important piece of advice I could ever give to anyone, and it's nothing new. It's said over and over, but I really think that even if you didn't have a process, this is even more important. And it's what I always go ahead and tell founders: never give up. That's it. Never, never give up. Never give up, ever. The second that you adopt that mindset, it doesn't mean that you don't iterate. It doesn't mean that you don't change. It doesn't mean that you don't, keep trying out different processes if something isn't working, but under no condition do you quit. None. And you know this from wrestling. How many times do you win matches if you just never give up? I mean, how many times have you been where you've had back points against you and you're struggling, but yet you didn't give up? And then suddenly some way you effing win. It's the same thing.
I have only one counterexample. I never gave up in this one match. I still got tech falled, but the guy went on to win 4 state championships and a national and like a couple national.
But did you really lose? You may have lost that
No,
match, but
I
what did
was
it
the
teach you?
only person he didn't pin that year.
There you go.
So like that was a win.
Damn right it was.
Yeah.
Damn right.
Chris, I really appreciate connecting with you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'll ask you one more question. If there's anything that our community can do for you, how can we help you out today?
I think I'm pretty good. I mean, but if there's any way that I can help your community in any way, shape, or fashion, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, I'm easily found everywhere, so it's pretty easy to reach me.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.